Hello, and welcome to Rallying the Forge. I'm your host, Sol. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Rallying the Forge. I'm Solimer, and in this episode, we are going to show the end portion of my internal testing. I'm going to show you what I go through when I complete all my matches and what I do from there. So let's jump in. You can see obviously I've got my bracket up. I've got the standings at the start. All three of my brackets that I have are completed. So I always start down with what I call the play-in event, have the champions bracket, and then we have a redemption bracket. So to get enough matches for all the decks, so it's not just one and done except for the bottom section. So now that they're all done, I go to my standings tab, and we got 12. Yeah. So then I've sorted the standings by the overall, so it's by their win percentage, and then the opponent's win percentage, and then wins, or maybe it's wins then opponent's win percentage. Let me see if I can find a tie. Yes, I think it's by wins and then opponent's win percentage if they're still tied there. So like these two decks, 10 and 11, are tied, but this one has a higher opponent win percentage. So nonetheless, just copying, paste values only. So some decks may have moved up or down. They may, this allows me to see the changes that happened throughout. I don't record the records or whatnot because that's always changing, although I may end up changing that whole format at some point, but I don't know yet. I just noticed. I wonder if I did that intentionally. I probably did. So, so that really wraps up this is the 11th series I've done. So now what I'll do is I will duplicate that, and now I'm going to rename it Series 12. So with 11, there's nothing else for me to really do from here. I don't believe I can hide the sheet. And I have all my previous series sheets here. You can see, so I have a kind of a historical log, but I don't have. I need to make a sheet of like an all-time standings and have a matrix. That's going to take some time. There's a lot of code to input. Obviously, this field here, expanding this out, this would be, probably at least 50 decks longer. So this is it's just going to expand massively. I have to change all the formulas for each field. And like for the overall record there, that's a kind of a manual process because they have to, it's just hard. It's time consuming, and it's something I think I'd like to do just to see, but not doing it at this moment. Maybe when I have some time off again, I will dig into that. But who knows? Maybe I won't because it's going to be too large of a project. But so we have the standings. So now what I do is sometimes if I had made large amounts of changes going into the previous series, so in this case series 11, which I did not, if I had made large changes, I may not make any more changes because decks, I feel like they need a few opportunities to play. So new decks, they'll come in at 0 wins, 0 losses, 0 win percent. They're going to be right in the middle area here. You're going to have some decks that have losses, so they're going to be below where new decks are. So new decks kind of get put in this middle section of, you can't see my hand on there, but from 14 through 34, they're all competing in the bottom bracket down here. And so down here, it's one loss, you're done. So if they lose their match, then they don't have any more matches. So they just go to like 0-1 if they're a new deck. If they win, they move up. And if they win and lose one, then they're going to be up in the 50 percentile range. Right now, 50% is borderline for just making the top cut versus having to play in the play-in event in the next series, which would be 13. So good decks should win. In theory, these decks down here are bad decks. That's in theory. Not always the case. Sometimes they just have bad luck. Like, what deck was it? This Darkheart Kurgaius deck, number 6 on the list. I think the first time it was in, it lost its match. And then this time it won through. Maybe it went 1-1, and then it ran through and did better, obviously. So, and it's a pretty good deck. It's not bad. It does have some consistency issues, but nonetheless, so that's kind of the process, though, of how that's going to work. I like to give decks a few rounds to try to start winning, work their way up to where they could play potentially easier decks to push themselves up to play the good decks. You can see some decks here. So the number 24 deck, Mantis of Soul's Drain, it's 2-4, but it's got a .6222 opponent win percentage. So it's played some good decks that are winning, 3 out of 5 times. And that's on the higher end. You can see anything above 0.6. There's only 6 decks that have had that. Those are the strongest opponent win percentages that we have based on this data. So, like, even though it's 2-4, it's played some good decks. I'm not going to eliminate it. I know the deck could be good, has been okay. I don't think it's world breaking, anything like that. It's probably at best a mid-tier deck, but I want to confirm that versus if it keeps losing and struggling, then maybe it's just a bad deck. So there is that, level with it. You can see the decks in red are probably 3 of the decks I'm going to eliminate. Even though they have a win, they've only played 3 matches, 4 matches. This one's 5 matches. They're just not performing. And they've obviously been in, 2, 3, and 4 minimum rounds. So this one is 1-4. It's been in at least 4, unless it somehow. I can't even fathom it. It had to go. I just can't think. I can't imagine that it got into the top bracket portion where it was allowed 2 losses. So, so these decks have faced what's considered weak competition. And what's really bad is this one. That means its opponents. It's given them 4 wins and only 1 loss, and they're still below 40% win percent. So, because I didn't do a lot of changes last time going in, I don't think I made any changes, actually. I might have made 1 change. I don't remember for sure. But I don't think I made any changes coming into Series 11. So this time I am going to make more changes. It's not going to be as drastic as I did, I think, going into Series 10, where we replaced maybe 10 plus decks. But I am going to do maybe half that at least. So what I want to do, because everything here is going to change, and it's automated. So as I start doing things, it's going to change everything on me, and I'm not going to be able to remember what I was doing necessarily. So I am going to, these 5 for sure, I put them in red text so I know that I need to change them. They need to go away, no matter what the stats say. I think I've committed to those 2. This one, I'm not feeling it. I don't feel like it's working. Then what else here? So, is there any other decks higher up I want to get rid of? This one's close, but it's 2 and 3, and even though it's faced relatively easy competition, we'll see. I think it'll get another round. This one's going to get another round. Everything up here above that is probably pretty decent. There's some other ones here that are going to adjust. So I got my collection manager. I need to go to my fused decks. So I'm going to grab these decks. And I'm going to move them because I need to archive them on my account. So that way they don't show up. I don't think that I haven't done them. Was it 1 or 2? It's version 1. And then version 2. Finally got rid of one of those. Of my 12. But there's other ones that are close, so I'm sure there's more coming. The goal was, I had 12 versions of that similar style deck with 6 various decks, combined them all, and the goal is to find maybe 1 or 2 that are actually good out of all that. So okay, so I have the 5 decks I'm removing. That's going to allow me to insert 5 new decks. So what I like to do is see what I'm missing from. Was that 5 lines? I want to make sure I didn't copy a line instead of delete a line. I got 3, 4, and 5. Okay, I guess so. So I like right now I feel like the pool is heavily focused on 2 or 3 archetypes, and I want a more varied archetype. However, I took, for example, so in season 10 when I did a lot of changes, I also retired decks out that had tons and tons of matches because they've been there the entire time. So like my Drix replacement decks, I took those ones out. I knew those are just going to be mid-level. I probably really even shouldn't. I have them made in physical, but I probably don't need them made. The Drix Gregarious one was a step above those. It's the same idea, but it just has it's paired with a deck that has Gregarious. The other two did not have Gregarious in them. They have some other mechanics that work well with the Drix Apocalypser deck. And then I retired out this RC deck because it's garbage. My son loves it because it's RC, and yes, sometimes it works. It probably works maybe half the time. And when it works well. But the other half the time, it is garbage. And so I was like, I need this out because it sucks. I also took out the Omni Darkheart deck. The deck's fairly good. It's slight consistency problems, but it's still a very good deck. Would it win, Worlds? Probably not, but it can definitely do very well. And depending on what it faces, it could definitely, go and make a top cut. It's a very good deck, and if it draws well, just like any deck, if a deck draws well, then they should do well. But this one is a really good deck. So, but I took those out. I retired a bunch of bad ones, and I put a bunch of stuff in. Well, at the time, I had enough decks made that I didn't want to make more decks I didn't have the second RSC deck. We opened some packs at some point and got some more RSCs, and I found a better one for them. So I was like, good. Let me make you another RSC. I didn't have it at that time, so I didn't put it in there. But this time, it's going to go in. So we're going to get an RSC back. I've just made a bunch of new Drix replacement decks. I've been meaning to make them. I have a second Alolan deck, very similar. It's got a Steel Rosetta with Tinker on 2. Obviously, Drix Apocalypser, Rallying. I think this one has a Palladium Pulse Mage. So I put some decks together. I also have I have a Betrayer Drix I drew last month, or November, I guess now. So I've been wanting to make a deck with that, so I did some things there. And so now I have all these Drix decks. I'm not putting them all in. I might put one in. I'm going to put, I made some double Kindred decks. Going to put one of those in. I've got some Explosive Demise Crypt Haunter decks that I put together that I want to put in there. So I'll put that in. I may put one of these Swamp Moss decks in, and then I actually may not do that yet, or maybe not. I only have 5 spots, so I have to choose, right? I want RSE in, and I probably I've transferred over some decks to my son's account, so that way these decks can be used. Previously, they were marked red on my account because I could not use them, seeing he had the other half deck, so I just moved over all the other decks to his account. So now I might put one of these, what I'm calling the Bones of the Uranti. They are all supposed to use these Blighted Circe, Bones of Solace, with Fire Fist Urantis. That's what they're paired with, 4 different versions of that. So maybe I'll put one of those in. I'll have to see. My son also has some Shardback decks that I put together for him, various things like that. I could put some of those in potentially, but I've only got 5 spots, so I don't have a lot. What I want to do, obviously, is next go around find more decks to take out and put more new stuff in, and hopefully the good stuff rises to the top in theory. I'm very close with, I could consider, I don't know if I'm ready to. So my top 2 decks currently that are active in this, they're both very good. And I feel like maybe I should retire them out, but I don't know yet. I feel like if I give it one more go, I feel like I'm going to get the same results with those 2 of some nature. One winning it, one getting second place. I don't know what's left to prove with them. I feel like they're both, And maybe I take those out and retire them out too. That's one thing I have done that I'm very bullish on, I guess, is I don't want to take them out because I'm not convinced 100% that they're good. Like the only deck I've had, obviously my Worlds deck, my best deck, when that was in this, that thing dominated. Like initially, when I started doing this, I was keeping record of the match scores of health totals, and it was always above 50, and the other deck was at 0 or below. Like it was ridiculous to keep track of all the health totals of all the matches, trying to see which decks are truly dominating versus. And I said that's too much work, but that deck dominated. These decks are good, but I feel like they're in tight matches and they just always pull through. So I don't know. I think I might just pull them out. I think I'm gonna do that. And what's gonna happen there? Seeing I've decided to do this is, oops, that's not what I wanted to do. Let's go to the other tab here. So I got to find them, and now they're going to become that. So those two decks don't get eliminated from my deck list. They're going to stay there, but they're going to get moved. So now I got room for 7 decks, which is good. And I'll be honest, these next 2 decks here are both really strong. This one right here, I've really been bullish on. It's been solid the last couple series. I feel like since these two have really joined the pool, it's kind of been pushed back. And there's some other decks here that are, this one I kept in, but it's probably going to end up being, maybe next round will be its last. It's been there since the beginning, I feel like, and it's just always been kind of mid tier. I wanted to see for a while there. It was bad. It was down here before I had the opponent win percentage to see that information, but it was always it was looking really bad, and I was like, maybe I just get rid of this deck. And then after I made some changes, swapped some stuff around, it shot up and it was doing really well. And now it's back to being, it's strong, but it's not the best. So it's probably really just a mid-tier deck, but my son loves it, so it's one of those decks that'll go into the blue section when I do pull it out. I'm not ready to do that quite yet, but maybe after this next series, just to see how it does with some new decks in there. So yeah, let's start removing, doing the process here. So I've got the decks marked. I have them marked here. I got them there, the 5 there. I want to make sure I just don't, because I have to go back into my account, archive all the old ones. I got some other stuff I got to do too with this stuff. So, okay. Ooh, excuse me. So let's start. Let's start with the top one. So it is in the matrix. So it is deck 29. I figured that was going to happen. I didn't want to have to do that. That's going to cause an issue. Okay. We'll figure that out. I'm going to have to change my formula so it doesn't divide by 0. So it does, it just puts a 0 there instead. I'll have to do another if statement. I'll figure that out later. I don't have time to do that right now. So the next one's going to be controlled aggro version 2. That's the number 13 deck. All right. Deck 13. And now it's zeroed out, and we can delete it. And then Wildfire Stones version 1. So that's deck 14. So deck 14. Life Gain version 2. It's down here. It's number 33. I forgot to delete that. It's number 33. Okay. Gathering Storm version 2 is number 30. We have that one version 1. That's deck 26. I'm sorry if you can't hear me, if I'm a little bit away from the mic. And then lastly but not least is the Rallying version 2, which is number 19. Okay, so now I've got open slots. So I'm going to see what happens here. I'm going to see if this breaks it. I hope it doesn't. I can actually make that all green now. So it worked out kind of well. So it resorts the standings. And this is important because this is, now that I've removed, make sure I got 7 decks removed. I did. So we go to Series 12. Something we need to do now is I need to delete out the old information. So the standings, obviously, how they finished is going to be different than where they are now. So what I'm going to do is I will go down here and I have some automated fields that get filled in based on information. And what I don't want to do is delete my formulas I've put into various fields. It's a lot of work to do that, to put the formulas in, make sure you have them right, and then normally once you build it for one. It works for all. You might have to make some minor adjustments, but it's still time consuming. So I don't want to have to redo that, which is why I always copy my sheets, and that always keeps my formulas in place for everything I need. So everything looks blank. So I have these on the right hand side. I've got some info to show me a little different look than looking at the bracket. I can see various information there. So we have a clear bracket now. You can see the standings. As I said, I updated. The 7 decks have been removed out. The standings have changed from the end of the previous. So we can see now the top 12 decks. Paste the values only. And then we have until we get those, and then we also have the bottom 5. So those ones we know. We're going to fill in the remaining 7 spots. So we need to go pick decks, and all I got to do is copy their name. So we're going to start with this one. And this one is, so the green signifies that I have it in physical. I've made it as a deck. It's in my playable decks. So it's just a reference for me when I'm playing what decks I actually have. Okay, so what else do we want to put in here? We talked about one of the Drix decks. I don't want to look at them and kind of cherry pick one, so I'm just going to pick. I think I'm going to do 2. I'm going to do, I think this one is one version and this one's another. So I think I'm going to do this one. Okay. So these 2 can get filled in here. And then I want to do one of these, so let me do that one. That's going to go into 19's spot. Okay. I wanted one of the double kindreds. How do I have? Oh, I do have. Okay. I really want to try this one out. So this one has a digital deck in the fuse, so it cannot it can never be used in a physical tournament until they do the print on demand feature. And who knows when that's coming. So, but it's there. It's just marked that way, so I'm aware. So I did want to do one of my explosive crypt decks. What am I going to pick here? We'll just pick one. Let's do the first one, I guess. Okay. What else do we want to do here? What do we have that's new? I did want to do more of my son's decks. Oh, I want to do the bones of Aranti, so we'll do the first one. We got one more deck to do. I got a lot of shardback decks because I have my windy decks in there, and none of them have really been eliminated yet one way or another. So I don't really want to do all those, but is there anything else here that I don't have? I feel like everything else is already in it. Is both hand 2 decks in there? Hand 2, I think they're both in there. Hand 2. So maybe I go back to my decks. I've got some Swamp Moss decks I could choose from. I already did 2 Drix and a double Kindred, right? Yeah, so I didn't do that. So maybe I do one of the Swamp Moss decks. So oh wow, I'm going to have to make that column bigger. Okay. So now I need to do paste these in, and voila. So now I'm ready, I believe, to start Series 12. I can start the matches. I always start down here in my playing event, and I'll do the matches. However they line up is how they line up. I don't adjust anything. I don't do any of that type of stuff. No need for that. Decks just face what they face. I'll play the matches and figure out my 14, 15, and 16 seeds for the main bracket, and then I'll do those matches. We'll start filling in the redemption bracket and get through those matches. Again, this process takes a few weeks, typically, depending on time, to figure out and do, but it's how I figure out what decks are decent and which ones are bad. And the bad ones I retire, I archive them, and the good ones I mark, and eventually my goal is hopefully to have a slew of good ones, and then I will do this process with those ones to figure out which ones of those are really, which ones are frauds and which ones are for real. So this with my other 2 videos on this process, the only thing I have left to really show is maybe how I'm doing it in the client with 2 accounts, but it's just playing on 2 computers. But once maybe I'll make a video on that, but otherwise, this really is the full process. You've seen the full picture now. There's more steps in regards to building decks. I don't think I've done a video in depth on making a deck. I know I streamed just after Christmas making some decks, but there's a lot more that goes into the whole thing, but this is just the quick process of filling out my sheet here and keeping track of the data. And then there are some other things I do that I'm not necessarily sharing, but eventually maybe I will share those aspects of everything. But hopefully you enjoyed, learned something, or are inspired to do something yourself. I'm always looking for better ways to do testing, more efficient ways. Right now, this is the most efficient manner for me. So it's what I do when I'm playing the game. I'm not in an event or whatnot. if I'm playing the game, this is what I'm doing. I'm testing my decks, always testing. So thank you for watching. I appreciate your support. Feel free to like, subscribe, or comment on the video. And I will see you guys around SolForge. And I'll catch you guys next time on my next video. Thank you. Have a great one. This has been an episode of Rallying the Forge. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.